Hey everybody. We had some weird technical difficulties about an hour and a half in. So in the middle of one of Dan's sentences, I disconnected, and so some of that might be a little disjointed. I am sorry, and thank you for listening anyway. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the video. It's March something, 7th?
hmm
Yeah. And we're here to podcast for you. Make words with our mouths about video games for you, the listener. Today I've got Dan, Steve, Nick, and special guest Leah, who
Hi.
we're gonna talk about some nostalgic stuff, because that's what we told you a couple weeks ago we'd be talking about. Or since you just got the podcast yesterday, it's been a whole day. I'm terrible at releasing the podcast. I'm absolute garbage at it.
But now they're getting a double feature.
True, but a lot of stuff we said 2 weeks ago are going to seem weird being said yesterday.
Are you
Well,
gonna are you gonna
mm,
upload this one right now? Today?
It'll probably be tomorrow.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
it'll probably be 2 weeks from now, based on my past track records.
based
Well,
on your
then
past
it'll
track
all line
record,
up.
there's a 50% chance that it'll never get released.
I don't know. I feel like that time of the podcast is pretty much over, unless something serious happens, you know?
There is like a lost archive for any dedicated video fan. Maybe someday they'll surface like 4 or 5 consecutive lost episodes that you can.
No, those are definitely gone. You'll never see them, you'll never hear them. They are dead to me.
You
Yeah,
wasted like 8 hours of my voice. You only get so much voice in a lifetime.
I I don't care. We'll be okay.
Well, anyways, Noah, what have you been up to that's kept you so busy that you couldn't upload the podcast?
Dude, you and I have talked about this, and we can talk about it on the podcast, but there is definitely not enough time in the day to do all the things that you want to do.
There is not.
So my life has been almost entirely scheduled out these days. From 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I work. I make it home somewhere around the 6:30 range. Uh, and then I putz around for half an hour. I eat something. I drink something. 7 o'clock rolls around. I start streaming whatever video game I'm streaming until 9 or 10 o'clock, and then the boys get on, and we start playing Apex until midnight or 1, and then I lay in my bed trying to sleep for like an hour. I go to bed around 2 in the morning. I wake up 9:30, 9:32 to be specific, and then I go to work, and that has been my entire life.
exciting stuff.
It's not a bad life. It contains a lot of video games.
It's really nice, but it's hard to fit in the other stuff. Like, I wanted to start this podcast specifically early today so that I could get done and do some other stuff. But like, there's just not enough time, and this is like, it's not the first time, right? I've felt like, oh, there's not enough time in the day, but this is the hardest hitting feeling of that I've ever had in my life. There is so much to be playing right now, and I want to play them all, but like, I don't have the time.
I mean, it's kind of like the wombo combo of all the normal games that you want to play. Plus, you finally found a speedrun game that you're really, really enjoying and one time in. And it just so happened to line up with like the most popular multiplayer game being released that is fun and that all of your friends want to play. So you have like extreme speedrun pressure and extreme multiplayer pressure on top of normal just like video games pressure.
Yeah, I try to. Okay, so I play a lot of Apex. We've talked about this last couple of podcasts, I think. I think Apex dropped right either before or after a couple weeks ago podcast. Um, and yeah, like I play a lot of that, and and I try to fit in the other games. Like I literally try to jump into Tetris 99 while we wait to drop. It is so hard to fit in the video games. So like finding time to edit the podcast is also proving to be difficult. But I have tomorrow off, so it should be good.
All we have to do is not make a lot of mistakes so that your editing is relatively easy.
It's going to be hard with that first big silence. I'm already going to have to go looking for that one.
None of these have been as bad as some of the gnarly silences that we've had in the past. We are the most average podcasters that you can find, so enjoy.
Oh man,
Can't
guys.
argue with that.
Some of those from the early ones that I listened to were like seconds.
They
Quite a
also
while.
they also feel longer. I feel like they feel longer when you're the person who's doing them. Like when you're listening to the podcast with your own critical like ear, you are very hard on yourself. Whereas if I'm listening to just like any other podcast or watching like a YouTube video or something, and there's a few seconds of silence, I don't really care.
Yeah, and I noticed that while editing too. Like sometimes the silence, I don't know, fits. Like you can tell they're trying to think of something. So it's and it doesn't take up like more than 5 seconds. If it does, I usually cut that down a little bit.
I mean, there's like there's two kinds. There's a transitional silence where it's just kind of like that conversation topic has died and the next one's bubbling up. And then there's the silence that happens when someone says something and everyone kind of has the like pressure of like almost responding, but they don't want to respond because they think someone else is going to respond. And so you kind of like everyone's sort of like holding their breath and trying not to be the first one to go, which usually just results in two people talking over each other anyways, because coordinating a podcast with 4 or now 5 people, none of whom can see each other, is hard. Turns out that when you're talking to someone, you use a lot of body language cues to know when they're going to talk.
At least 2 of us can see each other.
That's actually not true if you're referring to me and Leah. We are in opposite sides of the house.
Opposite rooms? Oh,
no,
man.
it's me and Nick. I can see Nick and he can see me.
That's why Nick was late
Yep,
to get up.
driving down.
We have a constant webcam link.
Ugh, I want in on that. I will pay.
We have like perpetual nanny cams set up so he can see everything I'm doing at all times of the day.
Beautiful.
Speaking of which, having your webcam the other day while you were streaming was pretty cool. It's like we were hanging out.
I don't know how I feel about it, but since you guys seem to like it so much, I may as well keep going with it.
I'm going to be honest with you. You don't have a choice. Like, if you're going to stream, you have your face up. I know that people will yell at you and they'll be like, the gameplay comes first. You got to have the most room for the gameplay. And it's like, if I wanted that, I would look up a Let's Play on YouTube and I would put it full screen. I want to see mostly gameplay, but I want to see Noah's face. I want to see you smile. I want to see you laugh when I make a joke. Or I want to see you not laugh if I make a joke that wasn't funny. Damn, there's one you're going to have to edit out.
I'm gonna have to cut that one.
What happened?
That
No
is-
response to that.
That is brutal.
I
That
had a
was one of those
response, but
not
not the
very
way
good.
he ended it, because like he ended it differently than I would have responded.
but you have had conversations before, right?
Yeah, but I didn't know how to word it around the way you worded yours, so it was gonna be
So
weird.
you just quit.
I gave up and hoped somebody else would fill the void.
Anyways, as your 2 biggest stream contributors and fans, we have voted yes on referendum webcam and look forward to seeing your face many more times in the future.
Well, I actually put it to a very serious vote yesterday that included all of my viewers, and it turns out that webcam is going away because not enough people voted for the webcam.
Okay, how many viewers did you have, and who were they?
I had 3, and
Oh my
I don't know
I
who they were
voted
because they
most
didn't talk,
times.
but they definitely weren't you two.
Well, they suck, obviously.
What? Okay, wasn't one of them Nightbot?
One of them is definitely Nightbot.
That's not fair. Nightbot is very shy. He's never going to vote for the webcam.
That's true. I had people come in and out, but nobody said a damn word. Nobody said nothing.
Got those dirty lurkers. But you know what? Maybe they'll be more inclined to talk if they get used to seeing your face.
I suppose.
Were you doing new speedrun or old speedrun?
I was finishing learning up the new one. I had something to say, but now I don't.
Do you want to go into what your games are? Or are you going to save that for later when we go over the games we've been playing?
I mean, we're probably going to have to get started with the games we've been playing and probably skip all the pleasantries of, hey guys, how are you doing? You guys are doing fine. You guys are working. You guys are playing games. I get it.
Yep. All that Leah and I have done is date and hang out with you for a gamer weekend.
I start spring break.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. All 5 of us went, right?
Yeah, so there is something relevant that we all did. We all went to Distant Worlds. And I have been... Leah, we've been to how many now? Like 6?
Yeah.
So they do Distant Worlds and then they do a New World. Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know, Distant Worlds is orchestrated Final Fantasy music. And a New World, which is like a spin-off concert to Distant World, is the same thing but with like a smaller band, like a 15 to 20 piece band rather than a full orchestra. But we've been to many Distant Worlds so far, and I would say that this one was a pretty good one. I'm more curious though for you, Noah, what this was like as your first one, and for Nick and Dan. Dan, was this your first one too?
Yes.
Yeah, and Nick, this was his first one in like 10 years. So tell me, people that haven't seen Distant Worlds at an average rate of once every year, how did you think this one went?
Okay, let me start. You can just hold down the talk button the entire time you talk, because it looks like you're cutting out a lot, and it sounds like you're cutting out a lot.
I'm not holding down any kind of talk button. I'm literally just talking the whole time.
Okay, you're cutting out at
Using
the end a
voice,
lot.
so-
So my opinion is, that's like actually the first concert I've ever been to, or like any sort of musical gathering thing. I thought they were really good, but the actual venue just needs updating, because like those are some steep stairs and scrunchy seats.
Mm-hmm. Worst seats.
Well, that's the Orpheum for you.
Yeah, I was not impressed with that. But overall, like, the entire performance was incredible. Like, I called it amazing when describing it to my mother.
Aw. Well, that's good. Good to know that the drive was definitely worth it, and the half an hour break after 4 hours. Oh, 4 hours for me, I guess. 2 hours for you in the car.
I'm sorry you had to spend so much time in that car. That was sort of rough.
It was worth it. We got to get music.
You did spend a total between the trip to get Noah and the trip there and back of like 6 to 7 hours driving in the snow for a 2-hour concert. So good on you.
Well, thank you. No, what'd you think of the, well, and everyone who went, what'd you think of the song lineup?
I'm going to let the others go first here.
I really liked the song lineup and the choices. They had a nice varied group from a good smattering of the games. Like they even had like I think just one song from 15, but I think they had one for 15, one from 14, and a bunch from like 7 and 8 and 9, of course. One thing that I noticed, so I've been to two Distant Worlds before this. Both were kind of probably really early on in when they started touring. And those ones they did like one or two like kind of special songs that were like almost little events. Like one of them was like they did the opera scene from Final Fantasy VI, like with real opera singers. That was really cool. And they did like in another one they had like a guest piano player do a piece. And in a lot of the shows, Nobu, he's in attendance, so sometimes he's done, like a special performance, and so that was always kind of fun. And this time it was just kind of all song, so there weren't really any of those. But otherwise, the songs are great.
I agree. It was kind of like straight into the point. There weren't any surprises. There wasn't the opera. There wasn't Benjamin Noose on piano. There wasn't the chick singing Sudeki Dene. But I think overall the lineup was pretty good. They knew that most of the people there were roughly our age, and so probably are most nostalgic about the PS1 games. I will say Primo lineup, if it had like one or two fewer songs from the PS1 era, like one fewer Final Fantasy VII song and maybe one fewer Final Fantasy VIII song, in favor of adding in a couple from 6 or from 4. And I actually even really like when they take the original NES games and they turn those into like full orchestrated pieces, because it's just interesting to see how they turn something so huge, or how they turn something so small into something so huge, like how they add in a bunch of supporting instrumentation and stuff. So that was a pretty good lineup overall.
Yeah, and I liked how they had a couple where for the NES or like the SNES songs, they like made a big medley out of the different tunes. So those are always fun. So you get a little taste of a bunch of the different songs that you recognize.
Yeah, I always like the medleys. I think the medleys are pretty fun.
That's number 3.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I really think 7 got way too much, like, quote unquote airtime. Like, you can take 1 or 2 away from 7 and still be okay, I would think.
I always feel that way, but they are very. I mean, you could also hear the audience, right? Like people like lose their shit about.
So,
And it's kind of tired.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you say that, because they always do the one-winged angel, and they always try to get the audience to say the Sephiroth part, and people this time were not having it. There was very little community engagement.
I feel like that's a Minnesota thing. Like Minnesotans are so like weird about like doing stuff like that, and I feel like when we've been to Chicago and then when we were in Milwaukee, people were like into it. They were ready to Sephiroth.
That's true. I also feel like this time I didn't see as many people in cosplay. Like I saw some, but in other more
I
common.
feel like the weather probably played a part in that this
That's
time
true.
around.
You got a good point.
I was really impressed with when they said they had to like pull together that Final Fantasy VIII song. Was that Balam Garden, I think, where they like didn't have the score, so they just had to like recreate the entire thing from scratch.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of neat. And through other things I was reading later, I also learned that sounds like they've just lost all the source code for that game entirely. So they don't have any of the sheet music or any.
Is that why it like never comes out on other platforms? Why like 7 and 9 always get re-released? And
That's what I was reading. Yeah, everyone's like, "Yep, the original PS stuff's gone, and the current PC port that's on Steam is hot garbage." So they just haven't.
Interesting. I would be fine replaying it on the PS1 version, but it would be nice if it was on Switch or something. Because
Yeah.
it is one of the Final Fantasy games that I feel most needs a revisit.
And it's one of the ones I haven't seen played or have played.
Wow. I mean, it's digitally on Vita, I think. I'm pretty sure I have
Weird.
it on there.
Of all places.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same port as the PC port though.
Oh, yeah. Did it ever have a mobile port?
I don't think so. Probably for the same reason it hasn't been ported to anything else.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, I thankfully 8 has really good music, so I was not like upset that they played a lot of Final Fantasy 8 songs. I just would have been happier to hear a wider diversity, especially Super Nintendo era stuff would have been cool.
I would say, like,
Yeah, some more Final Fantasy 4 would.
Go ahead.
He said.
Oh, I mean that was my statement. Some more of 4 would have been nice, like 4 Fiends or something like that.
All right. I was gonna say, like, if they didn't, remaster, or like what did they say, transcribe,
Mhm.
Balam Garden, like, that's totally fine not being in there, but I can see why they put that in there.
They put in all the work, they want to show it off. And it is a good song, so. Man with the Machine Gun they played too, and that's also a good song. So they picked good 8 tracks.
Any favorites of the songs that were played?
For me, I mean, I do always like hearing Xanarkand from 10.
Mm-hmm.
And what was
Yeah,
it?
I'd agree with that one.
Whatever they played from 9 was good, and I liked the Heaven's Word from 14 a lot.
Did they play 2 from 9?
They did.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the name. It's like Heading Home
Rose
or
of
something.
May, and I don't remember. And the other one was Not Alone, I believe.
Yeah.
Not
That plays-
Alone is the one that I really like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Same. But obviously, like, I'm partial to 9, so I really enjoy any songs that are played from it.
Partial to the best game.
I would say I actually got goosebumps during the Heaven's Word song. I thought that was real good.
The hearing like the full orchestration can be like pretty powerful. Like it catches me off guard how many times I've seen it. Like I still feel like a pretty decent swell of emotion sometimes for the songs that are impactful to me. Especially like the games that I grew up with that I'm really nostalgic about. Hearing those songs, I'm always like, oh, my heart is so full.
I
Yeah,
think
Terra's theme from 6 always really gets me every time I hear it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one by the way because they played a 6-character medley, which was so good.
like the song, the Heaven's Word song, like, I never cared about, really. Like, oh, that's pretty good. But then actually hearing it live was like intense.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the impact of the Distant Worlds or A New World. Like, you just get to like hear it and feel it, and I don't know, it's really cool.
Yep. So yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed being at Distant Worlds with all of you nerds.
Same here.
I liked the guy to the left of Nick.
I don't remember anything about.
Yeah, he smelled kind of bad.
Oh,
Oh no!
But he was so excited.
he was
He
so
was.
excited. Like, just unabashedly, just so into the songs. I love those people.
All right, should we get to games we've been playing?
Yeah, hit us with it. What have you been up to? What have you been playing? What have you been speed running on Twitch.tv?
That's twitch.tv/Nornsy for anyone who's really wondering out there.
Now with a
Um,
webcam?
yeah, now with webcam. Uh, so I got a sub 35-minute PB in the messenger, so I'm kind of like not shying away, but I definitely want to introduce new speed games into the rotation, so I don't get burnt out and bored of it, you know. And I don't know. I was looking for games, looking for like I don't know RPGs, something a little bit longer than 30 minutes. And I thought about Harvest Moon 64, and I have spent the last couple of days learning the route for marrying Potpourri, and that's kind of what I've been speedrunning. So I don't know. Any questions there?
Well, have you talked about speedrunning the messenger on the last podcast?
I talk about it every time I get a
Yeah, he
chance.
does.
Okay. I haven't heard it yet because it was just uploaded. So
You've had an entire day to listen to it, and you haven't. Nah, I
so
understand.
sorry.
Play it in your class, Leah. All right, kids, we're going to listen to my boyfriend's podcast.
They're really famous. You should
Yeah.
you should already know them by now.
Dozens of downloads per episode.
Hey, it's pretty good.
But
Just
A
making
number
sure.
of them might have been Nick.
many numbers of them were Nick.
So, Noah, have you learned more Harvest Moon? I don't remember when I watched you. Have you played more since we watched you that one time?
That was 2 days ago.
Yeah, I streamed yesterday and I finished the run. Um, there's some stuff about the dog race that I don't understand, but I don't know. The game seems really easy to run. You just got to remember what to do on what days. There is a lot of sleeping, which was my biggest fear, but
Hmm.
there's plenty to do outside of that too.
Oh, the one thing that I'll say, which I'm sorry is not a commentary on your speedrun, but man, Harvest Moon 64 has some great music. Those tunes were A plus and very good to fall asleep to.
Yeah, they are hard hitting nostalgia points. Not to move into the nostalgia, topic yet, but they are definitely songs I think about sometimes.
Yeah, and I've never been like I don't want to say I've never been huge on Harvest Moon. I think it'd be more accurate to say that I've never given Harvest Moon a fair chance. But watching you play that game moved Harvest Moon 64 like up on my priority list for N64 games. Like I have Midwest Gaming Classic coming up in a month, and probably will be looking for a copy of that if I can find it because it looked really fun.
I definitely think like it's like a counterpart, the one for PlayStation, Back to Nature. They're like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where they both have the same characters but they do different things. Um, I think Back to Nature is better, but Harvest Moon 64 definitely has more in the nostalgia department for me.
This is going to seem weird because people tend to not have this philosophy, but what I appreciated in watching it is that there weren't a ton of options. Like your menu, you could only have like 4 tools or hold like 9 items. Like it seems like it was relatively straightforward, which one is good as an introduction to those games for me, I think, but two, it feels like that would make it even more relaxing to play, like not having to juggle a ton of options, just having to choose between a good handful of options.
Yeah, things in your inventory don't stack, so you don't have to worry about like getting 99 of a thing, and um, farming is really easy and straightforward, and there's no like sprinkler system to set up after you upgrade your watering can all the way or whatever. So like yeah, it's really simple, and I think it's a very good entry into the series if you were thinking about Harvest Moon.
Yeah, that seemed awesome. Very cool. What have you been playing that you haven't been speedrunning?
So I was gonna talk a little bit about the messenger, but I think I said what needed to be said. Like I'm getting really fast at the game, and it's getting hard to save time. Like granted, the other run you guys saw me do a couple days ago, I was like 30 seconds ahead, but I felt like I was amazing in that run, and it died. But it's fine. Like I'm still gonna keep running the game, and eventually I'll get there. Um, but outside of that, Nino Kuni 2 I picked up for $20 this weekend, and trying to fit that into my schedule is very hard.
Hard when it's not a weekend dedicated to games where the internet's not working.
Yeah, pretty much. So like I I stream and then I play Apex and then there's no Nino Kuni. There's no way to fit it in and it's so frustrating cuz I also have Let's Go Eevee or Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Tetris 99 and it's just I still got crosscode on my plate, man. There's just so much I have to do and I can't.
I understand, man. My backlog right now playing list is like 8 or 9 games long because there's just too many good games to be playing.
Yeah. So the first Ni no Kuni is like a Pokemon type game where you collect the monsters and you use those to battle other monsters. But this one's more of like a action RPG, sort of like the Tales or Star Ocean would have. Um, and like the story is interesting enough because like you start as the president of the United States and somebody bombs a city and you get in a car crash and then you're whisked away to a magical world. And I really hope that this is all just like your life, like you are unconscious and your life is like flashing before your eyes or whatever. You're having weird visions of things and the president dies at the end. But I can't say for sure. But the game seems to have like uh, kingdom building mechanics and it's so like the thing that really got me was after you leave the first like tutorial dungeon, you just step foot onto the map and then there you can just go. Like nothing stops you except for like basic story stuff. I went into like a grotto and I fought some stuff. It was like a little half dungeon or something. Um, I went around and I fought things much stronger than me, and it was cool to see like high level stuff on the map. I hate being in a game where like that section has that level of enemy and it doesn't really deviate and then you can't really do anything there until you talk to somebody and then they progress the story and now you can go into that, cave that you couldn't before because some guy was blocking the entrance, but you got the mayor's note so now you can go in there. You can just go in there and it's super nice and that's a thing I really love about that game.
It, it's hard for me to say much without having played the first one, other than it looks very different from the first one. Like, it almost seems weird that it's called Ni no Kuni 2.
Yeah, it kind of just seems like a regular old anime RPG, um, where you could definitely tell the Ghibli influence was in the first one, and it's not so much here.
Hmm. It does have Lisa Simpson, though.
That's true. She is your king animal, spirit animal situation.
Okay, it's Maggie. It is definitely Maggie.
It's more like a cross between Lisa and Maggie.
It's baby Lisa.
It is baby Lisa. But it looks like Maggie. You'd expect to see a pacifier in her mouth.
That's pretty much all I've been playing. How about we have Dan go next?
Oh man, mine's going to be super exciting because I haven't been playing anything. I've been sick for the past week, and also my friend Sarah from Kansas City finally started playing Final Fantasy XIV with the free starter edition I gave her like a month ago. So I've been teaching her and her boyfriend the ropes because he went out and bought it too after we played for like 2 nights. So that's been kind of fun. They don't get on till a little later, but we've just been running dungeons and stuff. But I can't really level anything with them because they have the new starter bonus, which is until you hit 60 on a character or a job, you get like 500% extra experience or something. So we do one dungeon and they gain three or four levels at once. So her first class is almost, well, she started leveling Scholar, so she's leveling 2 at the same time, but they're almost 50 already. So she's just going to switch and start leveling something else and make the most of her leveling bonus before it runs out. And then I've just been doing like a bunch of random stuff in the Gold Saucer, playing all the mini games. There's one where you have to like stand on a big circular platform, and Typhon shows up, and they stop you from moving, and he tries to blast you off. So it's kind of a game of chance, but that was kind of fun. There's a jumping one, heavy platforming stuff, and that one kind of sucks because platforming's hard in that game. And I think the only other one was an airplane one that I've played, where you fly a little airplane around and shoot the targets. That one's really easy. But just been doing the old grind stuff. I'm almost have my Astrologian to 70, and then it's probably just gonna be me waiting until the Gunblade class comes out. Whenever I get pre access to that for pre-ordering.
Wait, does the Gunbreaker come out early or?
If
we
you
just
pre-order,
waiting?
you get to play like a week ahead of time or a couple days ahead of time or something like that.
Is it just the Gunbreaker or the other
I
ones
think
too?
it'll probably be the other ones too. I think it's just full early access to the expansion.
It gives me a reason to pre-order it, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot either, right? It's only like 40 or something for the digital version.
I don't know. Pretty much, I'm just waiting for the expansion to come out before I play again.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Pat is too, I assume, because he's been playing Apex with you and Joe Wade.
I don't know if that's the reason. I think he plays Apex by himself too. Like he is a higher level than both of us.
Oh, really? Okay.
That boy plays some Apex.
I mean, still doesn't have a job, right? So he has lots of free time during the week.
He gives me lots of stories about how hard he's working at learning a thing.
Oh, okay.
So I think he's more on track than Ben, per se.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't really talked to him since, well, forever. Actually, I think it was at the fundraiser thing that I went to that he was at for our friend Amanda. But other than that, I haven't seen.
Yeah, I talked to him for Apex, and that's about it.
Yeah, and since I don't play that with you guys, I'll never talk to him until he starts either getting on 14 again or I see him at a party or something.
Speaking of Apex, how's Apex going for everyone?
Good for the winners, I would think.
I won a round with Joe Wade and Noah a few nights ago. It was pretty fun.
For me, it's been going terrible. I haven't played very much, and when I do play, it's because Noah's in town and I'm not able to play with him. And
Dude.
that happened when Nick was here too. For some reason, Apex, if you have two PS4s on like the same Wi-Fi network, or maybe just our Wi-Fi network, it seems to struggle something fierce.
It
It's
has
impossible
problems,
to get into a game.
even outside of that. The PS4 version has so many problems. Like, some people will load in and we'll have to, like, reset to get everybody in because somebody gets left out. I think it's just the PS4 version is just messed up.
That's too bad because I'm definitely not going to end up playing the PC version.
What's Nick been playing? Oh, sorry.
So I've been on vacation the last 2 weeks. So I've been playing more than I normally do, but I beat Kingdom Hearts 3.
Keyblade.
So I got all the Keyblades. I did not have an awesome Keyblade during the ending sequences, so I felt silly. During all the like cutscenes where Sora's holding a big goofy Keyblade. But I think we've kind of talked about Kingdom Hearts 3. I guess I would say I probably liked 3 a little more than 2, but I think I still like the first one the best. And maybe for 2, that's just because like I didn't have the fondest memories of it. I know a lot of people really liked that one, but otherwise I've played a little bit of Apex with Noah and Joe Wade, not a ton. And that's been fun. Finally got a couple kills. I've been playing the Lifeline most of the time, just because her stuff is easy. But her, I noticed her like ultimate is calling in the care package. But a lot of times it can be kind of dangerous to use those, so I like end up holding on to it for a while. Otherwise, I had started before Kingdom Hearts. I had started playing Bravely Default, and so I've been playing that the last couple nights. That's been a fun game. It's much harder than Kingdom Hearts. I've had to like replay boss fights a few times. And like last night I realized that, or not last night, a couple nights ago, I realized I had like missed a bunch of classes to unlock. And so I like did a lot of backtracking and running around the world map. That game is
It's an RPG.
it's an RPG. It's actually tough sometimes. I was trying to unlock the Summoner and the Ranger classes. And you kind of do those by like, I don't know if they're truly optional or not, but you like go find these little exclamation marks out on the world map, and you will run into a person who is that class, and you'll fight them. And I was having quite a bit of trouble with the Summoner, because like every, I think like 3 moves, she'll cast her like big summon that does a bunch of damage to everybody. And then she'll also spawn like 2 soldiers that will flank her on both sides. So after a while, I figured out that you kind of just have to burn her down as quickly as you can, and kind of ignore her soldiers that she summons.
So what are you thinking about that game? Like, high ratings, low ratings? Just so far.
So far, it's really good. It's got really good music. The battle mechanics are with like the Brave and Default system, where you can like take the extra turns or kind of defend to build up the charges. That's simple enough to where like it's not a huge spin on just classic JRPG turn-based battling, but it does add a little something extra to kind of keep you thinking, especially in those harder fights. So overall, and the story has been good so far. Nothing like crazy, just like going to get some crystals and figure out why everyone wants to destroy the crystals.
You'll figure it out.
Yep. That's pretty much all I've been playing.
I'm going to take a second and let everybody know that in a few days, Apex is going to have an update and balance stuff.
Are they adding the battle pass in that update?
I think they are. I think that's the start of Season 1. But the thing I really wanted to say was the Mozambique is getting no buffs.
Well, I'll just keep ignoring it then.
Their reasoning was So some guns are just supposed to suck, I guess. Like it should be replaced immediately with other guns. But it feels weird to see so many of those, but also there's a high amount of just other guns. So it doesn't feel like I'm ever the amount of times I pick up a Mozambique like is so rare. It's like one out of every 30 matches or something. Cuz like better stuff is around.
I would favor it over a pistol personally, but I think of it as a gun that you get one panicked kill when you drop hot, and then you replace it with the gun off of the person you killed's dead body.
Yeah, that's what they described the Mozambique what it's for and why they're not buffing it. It just seems really weird to not buff it in any way. Like it is actual garbage. Because even if you're in melee range, melee is better than the Mozambique. So I don't know.
Wait, does melee actually do more damage than the Mozambique?
Uh, I'm pretty sure like the Mozambique does 3 times 12, uh, right? And then a punch or a kick does 30, but you have to reload the Mozambique. So I think, and you can like jump kicking is faster than punching, so as long as you're jump kicking, you're doing way more damage.
I've literally never jump kicked in my entire life.
I read about it on that Reddit website, so I'm in on the hot tips. But what have you been playing, Steve? Like, I don't think we talked about you yet.
I'll keep it short and sweet because I know we've got a nice meaty topic to go through here. So when you were up for Gamer Weekend, I played through most of and then finished the day after Resident Evil 2.
Wait, I thought we were gonna not call it a gamer weekend because
That's
it
true.
was not official.
Because of Distant Worlds, it was an honorary weekend that contains games, but it was not a gamer weekend. At least not more than any normal weekend is a gamer weekend. I appreciate you correcting my clerical error. Strike it from the record, podcast people.
I'll just censor it.
During my
During the beep weekend.
That'll be so funny. During the regular weekend, I played most of and then finished Resident Evil 2 the day after. And I don't know what to say that like isn't obvious or you wouldn't have read somewhere else on the internet, just other than just like it's really good. Like it is as good of an upgrade or an update to Resident Evil 2 as like the RE remake on GameCube was to the original game. It like keeps all the spirit of the original game, but like modernizes the controls and makes the game look really good, and brings in some of the mechanics from 3. So like it brings in like I think the gunpowder mixing, which was in 3. I don't know if it was originally in 2. Is in 2 now, so you can find gunpowder that you can mix into different types of ammo for different guns. But yeah, it's just I don't know. It feels good to be playing a survival horror game that is not super action focused, where you actually do need to conserve and like pick your shots and take your time and be strategic about it. Like I spent more time shooting enemies in the legs and trying to run past them than I did like sitting there popping a bunch of rounds into their heads. So yeah, Resident Evil 2 is super fun. I recommend it.
I think, and I don't know if this is the correct opinion, I think it's the best remake of any video game ever.
Wow. Oh man, now I'm on the spot.
I have never played 2 at all, but like seeing old 2 and new 2, I think I'm absolutely blown away.
That's hard. You might be right. So I don't know if any of these beat Resident Evil 2, but like those Spyro remakes were really good, and the Shadow of the Colossus remake played exactly like you remember Shadow of the Colossus playing in your head. So I guess it is better than those in that it is not only like a beautiful, smooth, modern version, but it also changes things to make the controls, uh, I think for most people, improved. I don't have any problem with tank controls in the old RE games, but I think the way it controls now is how most people are going to want to play it. So, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's like fully remade.
Mm-hmm. And it is so good. And when that guy's chasing you, it is so stressful. Mr. X. Oof. And I only played it through as Claire. I didn't play through as Leon. I don't think I'm going to immediately replay it again as Leon. I think I'll give it a little bit of time. There's too many games in the world for me to immediately replay it a second time, even if it only takes like 5 hours. So I'll give it a little distance before my second playthrough. But yeah, Resident Evil 2, very glad that I picked it up. Very fun. And then the other two games I'll just talk about a little bit. One of them is a game that just came out on PS4, I think not long ago. It's called The Council. It was an episodic game, and I think now all 5 episodes are out, and so they released kind of the full edition on PS4. And it plays kind of like a Telltale game. Like it is all episodic and conversation based. And you like making choices and navigating conversation trees and stuff like that. But on top of like the normal you making choices that will impact your story, it also has some like RPG elements. Like you are you're leveling up different like conversational abilities. So you're leveling up like how educated you are in talking about politics or talking about the sciences or the occult, or you are leveling up and putting points into your intuition or how forceful you are or how good you are at picking up on like subtle cues that might suggest someone is lying to you, stuff like that. So it takes like the Telltale formula and adds a weird RPG layer to it that is actually really cool. And then there are all kinds of like stat checks as you're playing through, where you'll have different dialogue options available to you based on what stats you've specialized in and how many points you've put into them and stuff like that. The other like on top of that interesting mechanical setup, the other weird thing about this game is the setting is it's like it's several hundred years ago, and you're on an island of like the super elite, essentially the Illuminati, and you're trying to find your mom while navigating like this political secret society. And the secret society is made up of people from all over the world, some of whom are very famous political figures. So like you have conversations with George Washington and young Napoleon Bonaparte and like kings and princes and duchesses and all kinds of weird stuff. And so it's it's just weird. Like it has kind of a creepy, weird vibe to it, but I don't think it's supposed to be a scary game. Leah, you watched a lot of this game too. What do you think?
Yeah, it's I'm pretty sure it specifically said it takes place in the late 1700s, and it was one of those things. I remember when you started it, my first comment was like, what is this voice acting? Like, it was so bad. I'm pretty sure it was like originally a French game and it was translated over, right?
Yeah.
And so, but honestly, like the story got intriguing really fast. Like I was like, wow, this is so distracting, such bad voice acting. And then immediately it was like, never mind, I don't even care about that. What's going to happen next? So I found it super interesting so far. It's been really fun to watch you do the puzzles that so far aren't like super difficult and bungle some of them. And also just like there are a lot of surprising variety of options within the game to navigate. Like, you know, you can choose to, like you said, go talk to George Washington over here or go talk to this person over here. And that like sort of changes the path of the game based upon what, I mean, I'm not sure to exactly what extent, but you learn more about that character versus this character. It's been like fun so far. It's just like very different, I feel like, than I would have expected of a game like
Yeah, and this game came out of nowhere. Like I've heard no one talk about it. I've heard like no coverage of it, nothing. But I'm glad that I picked it up. I picked it up kind of on impulse because it seemed kind of cool. Like the premise of a secret society, Telltale type game seemed cool, and so it was cheap. It was like $20 or something. So I picked it up. And we just finished the first episode, and it ends on like a pretty intense cliffhanger. And I'm looking forward to going back and checking it out. Like Willia said, cannot undersold. Like the voice acting when you start this game is so bad. Like it sounds like every voice actor was given each line individually and not in order, and they were told nothing about what emotion to convey during the reading of that line.
Man.
So it's just it is all over the place. And it's made even weirder because this game has a very like I don't know how to describe the style of the game, but everyone looks like really
Gothic?
exaggerated and gothic. Everyone looks like Jigsaw from the Saw movies, like different versions of Jigsaw. Like they all look like weird leather-faced murderers almost. And all that stuff, like the voice acting, the weird visual style, you just like forget about all that after a while because like it pulls you in.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. Definitely will want to keep playing it.
Yeah, I think we'll play more this weekend for sure.
So you said only 2. What's your last one? Because I feel like there's two more that you could consider yourself playing or have played.
I'll be curious to know what one you're thinking of, but the last one that I had was Battle Princess Madeline.
Oh, I thought of 2 more.
So I kickstarted Battle Princess Madeline a year or 2 ago, whenever the Kickstarter was live, and this is the like 2D platformer, ghouls and ghosts type game. That the hook was all of the monsters and stuff was designed by the designer's daughter. So it's pretty cool, I guess. When I first started playing it, I was not into it. I was kind of disappointed. It was sort of like the font was really ugly, and it was hard to know where to go in the game. You start the story mode, and there's a lot of like wandering around talking to people. You pick up items and money, but I never found anything to do with the items and money. The areas are kind of easy to get lost in. So I was kind of like, not really liking this as much as I hoped I would. But there's an arcade mode, and the arcade mode is the mode that I actually really wanted to play. The arcade mode basically plays like a Ghouls and Ghosts, where it's just normal 2D left to right levels with a boss at the end. And I'm having a lot more fun playing the arcade mode, so I probably will beat the arcade mode and maybe not the story mode. But I also hear that there's a big patch coming for the game that adds a map, and it changes some of the areas around, and it adds like a new hint system and stuff. So it sounds like maybe they've gotten the feedback that the story mode is kind of so-so, and they're looking to improve it. And I'll be looking forward to playing that when that patch comes out, and I'll play arcade mode in the meantime. But yeah, Battle Princess Madeline's cool. I'm glad that I finally got my code. It'll be a few more months, I think, before the physical version comes. I did order a physical version, but as a backer, I got a code for it, so I can play it now. So that's that. Anyways, Leah, you have a game that you've been playing to talk about, but what are the other 2 that you were thinking of?
Well, I guess maybe I'm not sure if it's qualified like games that you are currently playing or games that you've played and beat, but Deltarune.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I played through and beat Deltarune because it came to Switch.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1, yeah, which is the only chapter that's released and probably will be for a long, long time. But it's cool. If you played Undertale, it is like more of that style of game, but now you have a party system, and it plays sort of more like a traditional turn-based RPG, but still with that Undertale battle system. Yeah, I won't go like too deep into it in the interest of time, but I mean, if you liked Undertale, you'll like Deltarune. It's got good music, it's got good characters, and it ends on a cliffhanger that has
Mhm.
me very interested to see where the story goes.
And chapter 1 was a lot longer than I had anticipated. I mean, it feels like it was almost as long as just doing a run through of Undertale.
It was, yeah, it was like maybe 2.5 hours, maybe closer to 3 hours even. Like it was meaty. It was good, and it was free.
Yeah, so people should check that out if you liked Undertale.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, free games are taking the world by storm these days.
They really are.
But the other game I was thinking of was Everyone, unless you mentioned it on the last one. I can't remember how long it's been out, but Tetris 99 for everybody, basically in here.
I think we did mention it. Yeah, we did mention it on the last one, but we all continue to play Tetris 99, and of the 5 of us, Leah is the best at Tetris 99. So
I think that's why she brought it up.
It's really not. You guys
So,
watched me this weekend. I didn't even hit one.
That segues into our main topic. Leah is going to give us Tetris 99 tips and advice for the next hour.
Be good at it and be less bad. Don't make towers.
Impossible. Anyways, Leah, what have you been playing?
I've been playing Stella Glow. So Stella Glow, correct me if I'm wrong, is made by the same people who did the Luminous Arc games.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. So I played the Luminous Arc games like a long time ago, and I really, really enjoyed them. And of course, I always get hooked on like games that don't really exist all that often, and I really did enjoy those. But like, there was some problems with them. Like, they were pretty simplistic. They were tactical RPGs, and a lot of the battles were either a little simple or like the game drug on for longer than it needed to. But the endings were always really good. Like, it got to like a good level of challenge and had a variety of maps and stuff like that. And Stella Glow came out a few years ago, and I finally got it and started playing it. So it's very RPG in story, where it's like, it's a boy who becomes a knight, and he has to like save the world by uniting these witches and using their song together in order to stop the bad witch. And of course, all the witches are cutesy little girls. I think they're supposed to obviously be old-ish, but they look like they're like 14. And it's pretty cool because it has a balance of like, you get like free time, so you can like talk to certain characters, and apparently like, that will help you in the battlefield. Like, you'll get different boosts or new skills that you didn't have, and they obviously can benefit you there. And I was reading that it also can change the ending depending on how you like level up the various friendships. So get those social links, and it can affect how the game plays out. And I'm not super far, but each chapter has been like a couple hours long. I think I'm like 10 hours in. And so I just started chapter 3. And I mean, I take forever on games anyway, but it's pretty not linear exactly. But when you're on like the battlefield, you can choose different like little circles to go in. Like, I can do these optional battles, or I can do the story battles, that kind of thing. Super pretty, really fun so far. Great music, has a lot of like good animations and good voice acting. Like, definitely would recommend it to anyone who likes tactical RPGs. They totally stepped up their game in that regard. Like, there's tons of like different levels with, or not, like heights, like up hills or down things, and like, water and different types of grass, and they can either give you boosts, or they can give you like skill debuffs, kind of depending on where you're at. So it's been really fun so far. I am definitely extremely pleased. I had already heard that there was a lot of really good, like, people were like, yeah, this is what I was looking for in this sort of like turn-based RPG.
It is sad that, like you said, it is very, I think it's generally considered that studio's swan song and like a high point in that genre, and it's a bummer that was their final shot before they filed for bankruptcy.
I know.
as good as it is, we'll probably never see another game in that series or from that studio that was so good at making those types of games.
Yeah, a huge bummer, and also extremely like not surprising. I feel like all of those like niche things that I like end up sort of just fading away.
Yep, you have the curse. Thankfully, that studio's done a lot of stuff, and we've only gone through some of it. Like we still have Arc Rise Fantasia on the Wii that they did. I think they did some other stuff. They did that Seventh Dragon game that's on 3DS that we don't have yet. They did Criminal Girls, I think, or at least one of the Criminal Girls games.
Criminal Girls was hard. Like, it's like silly and awkward, but like I had played that a little while and then I stopped because it was really challenging. Like, I don't know, more not as challenging as Akiba's Trip, but yeah.
That type of game is really hard. That dungeon crawler, especially if you haven't played one in a while. Like, I feel like it's a genre that you have to really take the time to like get super involved in, and I usually don't. Although this is a total tangent, but this month the remake of Chocobo Mystery Dungeon is coming out, and I want to play that because it's like a baby roguelike.
Totally. Oh, and I was Stella Glows for 3DS, or that's what we have it for. So yeah, that's basically it. Mostly I'm just watching you guys do your thing.
That's all right. You get to experience more games that way.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So Noah, now that we've been recording for like an hour or more, what's our main topic?
It's definitely or more. But our topic, as avid listeners would know, is we all decided to do like our top 5 most video game nostalgic situations that we remember. I'm not sure I would call it like that, but that's how I said it.
Nostalgic childhood or otherwise gaming memories. Like when you think back, what gaming things from your life give you the warmest fuzzies?
Something
okay,
like
but
that,
Steve,
yeah.
You specifically told me childhood, and when I asked if it could be other years, you said childhood.
Well, then you'll have some good ones for your childhood. Mine are all from my childhood too. None of mine are newer than like when I was like 12, I don't think. Well, no, some of them might be like in my early teens.
Who wants to go first?
Should we each go around, like everybody do one and then go around, everybody does another one, rather than have one person just go through all 5 of theirs?
You want a round robin?
I think round robin's the way to go.
Are we going in order?
We can go like down the list of like where we are in the voice chat, right? So it'd be Steve, Nick, me, Leah, Dan.
Sure. I'll start with my first one. My first one is the one that I was the youngest for too. And it is the Christmas morning where I got my Sega Genesis. So I don't know what year it would have been. Whatever year Sonic 2 and the Sega Genesis bundle with Sonic 2 came out. So is that like 92 or 93, I think? I would have been like 5 or so. And what I really loved about it is it was Christmas Eve, and my sister, who's like 10 years older than me, so she's like in her teenage years at this point, she sneaks into my room and she's like, "Hey Steve, wake up." And it's like midnight. She wakes me up and she's like, "Hey, Santa's already been here. Let's go check out what he dropped off for us." Because she knew that my parents had already put the stuff under the tree and gone to bed. So we snuck up at like midnight and opened our gifts from Santa. And my main gift and my biggest one was a Genesis with Sonic 2. And so she helped me hook it up to our big tube TV that was sitting out in the living room. And I just sat there like cross-legged on the ground in front of that tube TV playing Sonic 2 for like 8 hours straight. Like I could not get enough of it. And I played it until my parents woke up. And they came out and they're like, "Oh, you're already awake." And I told them that I had just been awake for like an hour before that because I didn't want them to think that I had like stayed up all night playing this. But yeah, I have like very vivid memories of sitting there cross-legged staring at that TV on like the old wooden TV stand that it was on, this like big ugly 32-inch heavy tube TV, playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Oh, it was so good. And I think that might be my earliest gaming memory at all. I don't recall. I'm sure I played NES with my sister before that, but I don't recall anything specific prior to that. So, not only was it the first console that was like mine, but it's also the first game I remember playing.
Aw.
It is good. Nick, you got one for us?
Yeah, I feel like it's like not as specific, but and I can't quite go that early back. Like my first console was the N64, and then my first like video game unit was the Game Boy Pocket. So, it's like the first video game I owned, I think, was like Pokemon Red. But when I was like in elementary school, living here in down in the cities, one of my friends down the street, he had a lot of stuff. His parents kind of spoiled him, so like he had all the consoles, and I remember going over to his house like all the time, and like sitting in his basement playing like stuff on the Super Nintendo. Like he had like the Monopoly game and the WCW or whatever the wrestling era was for those.
WWE.
Might have been WWE, doing like the Rumble matches and the cage matches and that. And he had, I think he had a Sega too, because I do remember playing some like Pitfall and some Sonic in his basement. That was always really fun. And then like when we were a little older, and I think when he had like an N64, he liked his wrestling games, so we played like the N64 wrestling games, WWE versus WW Bra. Those are always really fun, even though I never knew how to do the special moves. So he always won.
I also don't know how to do the special moves. That's a good one.
I feel like we're the Beast cast.
Why?
Because my number 5 also has wrestling involved.
Oh no. None of mine have wrestling, so we're good there.
Alright, so I was between 10 and 15, somewhere in that age range. And I would go hang out with a friend of mine's who I am no longer friends with, but we're not unfriends. I would go to his house and we'd watch WWF or whatever it was at the time, and then we'd actually wrestle. And I didn't like wrestling. I did not like the act of it, and I did not like watching it. But he was my friend, so that's what we did. And we'd play like Super Nintendo games. Like there was some baseball game. He definitely had the sports video games, but he got the PS1 at some point, and then he had that first like, not the first, but he definitely had like a jam pack or a jump pack. I don't remember what the PS1 demo discs were called. Do you?
Jam pack.
And it had Tony Hawk Pro Skater and some Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh, so that demo is, I'm pretty sure, a Sony. Is that a Sony Interactive demo, or is that one of the Pizza Hut demo discs? Oh my god!
I can't remember, but he had it.
I played that demo disc to death.
Dude, we would do a run through of the Final Fantasy VIII, and then we'd play Tony Hawk for a bit, and then we'd go back through Final Fantasy VIII. The mission was like the seed mission, where you like It's your graduation mission or whatever.
Beat Ifrit.
Where that like that big thing chases you down like through the city street.
Oh, the
Yep,
spider
so-
tank.
So yeah, so that was one of the Pizza Hut demo discs. It was the green one. It had Ape Escape, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Cool Borders 4, Final Fantasy 8, and Crash Team Racing. Dude, I played that demo disc to death.
Dude, I did too, and that's why it's on my most nostalgic moments or whatever. Because literally multiple weekends, that disc got played. Like everything except Cool Borders, we definitely played that, but not as much as Tony Hawk and Final Fantasy 8 and Crash Team Racing.
Yeah, I played a good amount of Ape Escape on that one too. Oh, the Tony Hawk one too. It was like, it was either 1 or 2 levels, but I remember it was just like the warehouse and Superman over and over again.
I could not get enough.
Oh, dude, I still can't get enough. That song is one for the ages. I have that demo disc like on display in my game room. I found it years later at a thrift store, and I was so pumped. We can play the demo disc next time you're here.
I was gonna say that sounds like a '90s gamer weekend situation.
That is a '90s gamer, dude. It's a plan because that demo disc is the best. I'm pretty sure that in that Final Fantasy VIII demo, that it plays a song that was never in the full game too. Like,
dude,
I remember it having exclusive music, or reading that it had exclusive music. Man, you picked such a good one because I'm so nostalgic for that demo disc, and it wasn't on my list. Ah, I am happy.
All right. So Leah, you're up next.
So I wouldn't say it's my oldest like gaming memories, but it's definitely like my most nostalgic. When my dad got the Super Nintendo, and we had Lion King and Super Mario World and Tom and Jerry, and I visited my dad on the weekends, and that's like all we would do. Like, he would let me play the Super Nintendo, and he would play his computer games, and like I would play all 3 of them to death. Like, I was between 7 and 10, depending on which game you're specifically talking about. And those games are not Super Mario World. Those games, obviously, like, that one's not as hard. Like, but it was nice and long, and so many fun secrets. And Lion King and Tom and Jerry are both impossible. And
Do you want to tell them what happened when we tried to relive these memories?
When we tried to relive these memories because of the nostalgia, this was like a year ago. Lion King, like, we eventually, I think, got through, but like, it was a challenge. There were a few levels where we were like,
The lava level?
the lava level, yeah,
the
you had
waterfall.
and the waterfall. Like,
Really?
we were on endless loop on the waterfall for like ever. I don't know why. We'd like get to that halfway point, and we'd be like, okay, we got this. Okay, get on those logs and just get that last little bit up, and then we'd think we were doing it, and then we'd look and we'd be at the freaking bottom again. Oh my god.
And Tom and Jerry has that jump. There's like one jump in like a kitchen level of Tom and Jerry, and we are 2 adults, and we could not figure out how to do this one jump. It is impossible. I'm pretty sure that the game can't be beaten.
Yeah, it's like that's where I got stuck when I was a kid. It's this level in the kitchen, and I mean, you play as Jerry, and you're trying to, Tom's obviously chasing you through, like, you start in like a garbage dump, I don't know, and then I think from there you go to a movie theater, which is freaking awesome because you get to skate. Like, that level is like you're on a ticket stub, and because that's how you went to the movies, was you got a little ticket stub, and you had to like jump over gum and popcorn and bugs that were on the ground. And then the 3rd level, I want to say, is that the toy level? I think there might be one in between them, but there's one where you're like in a toy store, and then eventually you end up in this kitchen. And I like had told Steve when we like got the game, like, I never beat Tom and Jerry because I couldn't. There's this part in the kitchen where you're like on a toaster, and you have to use the toaster lever to like jump you across this insanely huge gap. And Jerry has like some bounce where, like, how in those old era games where it feels like random on whether or not you just do a normal bounce or a high bounce. And so you can do a high bounce, but the thing is that it gives you a lot of vertical, not a lot of like horizontal or like arc. And so I was like, okay, but maybe I was just a stupid kid and let's figure this out. And so we played the game. It was hard. Died a lot. And then we get to this part and two competent video game adults could not figure it out. So
Impossible.
it's great. Nostalgic. It was so good. So yeah, those 3 games are like the games of my like very early childhood.
Nice. Those continue to be good games
Mhm.
for you even today.
So true.
I have not beaten Lion King.
Oh no.
Hard.
It's hard. The last level's hard because you have to like weaken Scar, and then you have to like flip him off the edge of Pride Rock, and it is not easy to do. Anyways, Dan, what do you got for me? Take me back to young Dan.
Well, mine's pretty similar to yours, except it was a Super Nintendo instead of a Sega Genesis. It was early Super Nintendo, so it came with Super Mario World. That's the only game I had for a while. But I remember spending, much like yours, I didn't wake up at midnight because I was the oldest, but I just slept and get up. We get it set up on our big ass tube TV in the ugly wood TV stand that had like the glass doors on one side that you'd open up with the shelves and everything. And I worked my way through it, and I spent a lot of time playing that. And it was also the time that I developed my epilepsy. So my parents thought it was the video game that did it. So they became very restrictive on my playing habits pretty soon. But my dad always likes to tell the story of how I would get all the way through Super Mario World, no issues whatsoever, and then as soon as Bowser would show up on that screen, I would run out of the room screaming because he scared me. Because I was like 5.
Oh,
He's a
Um,
scary dinosaur.
he gets real big and he flies up in your face.
So good.
So-
And his clown little floaty.
Yeah, this creepy clown car thing he uses to fly around.
So good. What a game.
It was a good time. It wasn't until many years later that I finally fully beat like the special world,
Wow. That's a good world.
because I didn't even know it existed, really. Like I would take the Star Road all the time to get around, but I never cleared all. Like there was like one Star Road I never took, so I never completed the whole star. And never found out about it until.
That's crazy. I mean, there's a reason why Super Mario World was the game that I had learned to speedrun for. Like, I played that game to death. So,
Yeah.
it's a good one. That's a really good one.
nice. All right. I'm generally trying to go in chronological-ish order for me. So my next one is it's like a small one, but for some reason when we had this topic and it was like, hey, think of your childhood gaming memories, this one pops into my head constantly. And there's a lot of Nintendo 64 ones I could have chosen because that was such a huge console for me growing up. But the one that I specifically remember is I stayed home sick from school not long after I got my Nintendo 64. And I was laying up on the couch with like a blanket on, just laying in bed at like 9 or 10 in the morning. Leah was... the couch was along the banister by the stairs to give you a perfect mental picture.
Oh, good picture.
And next, like I was laying there, I had my like glass of water or orange juice or whatever I had, and I had it was when you had a bucket sitting next to you in case you threw up, back when your parents would just set a bucket next to you.
Oh yeah.
Yep, everyone knows that life. But my parents brought out this really old, like 13-inch Zenith TV, and I hooked my Nintendo 64 up to that, and we set it on the coffee table. And I remember like laying there sideways playing Super Mario 64 while sick at home from school that day. And I vividly recall that I was on the first Bowser level that you get to through the 8-star door. And I was like fighting the first Bowser fight for the first time in Mario 64. And I don't remember being sick at all. Like I don't think I was faking it, but I definitely don't think I puked in that bucket. And all I remember is having fun playing Mario 64. So, like, there are many instances of like staying home from school and playing games, but that's the one that like really sticks out to me the most.
Your parents are so cute, supporting your little video games.
They were very supportive. The story of how I got my Nintendo 64 almost made the cut, but it did not. Nick?
Wait. I want
What?
to cut ahead of Nick because mine is also about playing the Nintendo 64 sick.
Nice. Noah, go.
So, this was not our Nintendo 64, but my dad's friend would usually get the new console when it came out. Like, he had a Super Nintendo, he had a 64, and I'm pretty sure he had, like, a GameCube. But he came over, and he was playing, like, Super Mario 64, and I was sick on the couch, bucket in tow, and I forgot what happened, but they went to go do something else or whatever, and I very weakly asked to play the 64. Because in my household, if you are too sick to go to school, you are too sick to play video games. And I have no idea what got into them, but this time it was totally okay to play Super Mario 64. So my section that I remember in my head was I played Shifting Sandlands, and I was in the pyramid, and I was doing all the pyramid stuff, and I was like so confused on what to do because there were secrets, and I was trying to find all the secrets in the pyramid. And then I climbed the lava waterfall in the Lethal Lava Lands, I think it's called.
Yep.
And I stayed away from Hazy Maze Cave because it was scary to me.
It was scary. Those like little bug things that scooted around, man, that's no good.
Yep. So that was my sick Mario 64 nostalgia story. So Nick, you can go next.
We could do a whole episode on stuff that scared you that shouldn't have scared you when you were a kid. Anyways, go ahead, Nick.
So a lot of my memories are going to involve Steve because
Yeah. I gambled and didn't include a lot of N64 and memories and stuff because I was hoping you'd put them in for me. So I'm very pleased. Continue.
yeah, and like because a lot of my gaming bits were kind of born when we started being friends. So, but I think one of the first ones I remember is actually we had a sleepover at my house. And it was one of the very first ones we did. And I remember we played like the Spy Hunter on the PS2 like for a large portion of the night.
Oh, I remember that now. That was a good game.
And it was just fun because we're just all taking turns and like trying to go through the levels.
Yeah, I remember like a water level. Was that game like sometimes you were on land and sometimes you were on water?
Yeah, like I think the car could like do,
Switch.
like hover wheels and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or turn into a boat.
I haven't played that game in years. I should go back and play that. That's a good one. I had actually kind of forgotten about that until you said it, but as soon as you said it, whoosh, it came rushing back.
That's just one of many sleepovers.
I assume that there are a lot of sleepover ones. Not to spoil what's coming, but do you have How We Met on your gaming memories list?
I don't, but I when I wrote it, but I thought of it during the podcast.
I don't. It'll be like a quick bonus one, and maybe you remember the details more specifically than I do. But Nick and I are only friends because of the Nintendo 64. In middle school, we had a class together, and I forget who was it. Was I talking to someone about it, or were you talking to someone about it?
So we were in Skytime, which is like our homeroom equivalent, and you were talking to Mark Richardson.
That sounds right. It would have been my brain. I couldn't remember if it was Mark Richardson or Pete Mavison.
Important.
Yeah.
And you guys were like talking about Donkey Kong 64, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and GoldenEye.
And timid young Nick turns around and he's like, "I've got those games."
Aww.
And it was like, did we just become best friends? I think we did.
That is cute.
Mm-hmm. So it's only because of Donkey Kong 64 that we are friends.
It's true. It's like, because that was one of those things where like I didn't have like no one from like my elementary school like was in my Sky Time, so I was like, I gotta talk to somebody.
Booyah. Ah, good one. Good one, Nick. Leah?
So my next one, I am not going in chronological order, and I have no N64 memories that are nostalgic. Did not really have that system, so my next memory is Mario 3 on the NES. So when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time at my grandma's, and I have this kind of really weird family where some people in the family sort of like married other people, and then they got divorced and married that person's sibling, that kind of thing. So I spent a large part of my teenage years visiting my grandma, who my cousin lived with, because his dad married my grandma. He was my gruncle. And he had all of these systems, and he was 2 years older than me. And we either would play the Genesis or we'd play the NES. And one time we left it out, and my grandma was bored one day. And I mean, if any of you know my family, my family's pretty young, so my grandma was probably younger grandma at that point still. And she picked up the controller and started playing Mario. And she picked up the controller upside down because she didn't know how to play it, and she learned how to play and got good with it upside down. And so like the next time I went over there, and she was like, "Oh yeah, so I picked up this game, and I noticed that there's like these like cards that show up, and you have to like match things. And so I just went ahead and I made this little chart." And so she had like a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and it had, each side had, I think, 4 like big squares on it, and within each square had all of the matches from those cards. And she, like, full color, had like drawn everything. Like, she had played the hell out of that game and made found every single match that she could. I mean, she was still filling it in and that kind of thing, but eventually she got it filled, got it laminated. And so like that gave us like a boost, I guess, where we wanted to like keep playing it, because we really loved being able to like be like, okay, so the fire flower is in this corner, so that must mean it's this one, like this iteration of the card. Let's do all of the matches at once. And so my cousin and I would just, again, like basically speedrun Mario 3 as much as possible and have my grandma play with us. And it was super cool, fun time, and thought I had like the coolest grandma, because like I didn't know any other like female people who really played games who weren't like me and my sister. So it was a pretty fun time.
Does that card still exist?
I don't think so. Thinking about how like that would have been. Well, I don't know. My grunko still lives in that same house. Like there's a chance it does. Maybe I could ask him sometime. But yeah, it was so cool.
That would be awesome to get back. I would happily frame that and put it in our game room.
Right, and it's like one of those things where like I'm sure you can like look that stuff now, but this was like, you know, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So like it wasn't like just googling the answers. So it was like one of the most adorable things ever.
It was before GameFAQs. You had to be scrappy back then.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Good time.
Good one.
Quimby?
My next one makes an interesting jump because it goes from consoles to PCs. I My parents had a Tandy. I don't remember what model they had, but it was, a DOS machine. There's no Windows on it or anything. So the 5 1/4 floppies, all that fun stuff. And we had a number of computer games for it. But the main one that I remember, and I spent the most time playing with my dad actually, is the Quest series, the Sierra games. King's Quest and Space Quest.
Mm-hmm.
So our old house was like 3 levels. So you get a basement, first floor, and an upstairs. And the upstairs was carpeted, but it was like a narrow roof. So the we had like our computer up there, and it was mostly storage. But we'd sit up there playing that when he'd get home from work, and mostly just fun. And if any of you have played them before, you'll know that if you don't pick up that one random piece of garbage at the very beginning of the game that you think is insignificant, you're not going to finish the game.
Yep. I've only played, I think 5. I played the NES version, but yes, it is. They are brutal.
Yeah. So I played. We played 1, 2, 3. We had those. We never had 4, and we had 5. So the first one that I played when I bought the Steam remakes of them, or Steam ports, was 4 actually. So I could just get through it. King's Quest, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think we had all of them. And over time, we did end up beating all of them together. So that was like one of those things where it was look back fondly on that one, just because it was good father son bonding time. Because he spent a lot of time at work, and I didn't have a lot of time to spend with him outside of that. Just because of my epileptic stuff, I didn't do a whole lot of high contact sports or anything outside. So they kept me inside a lot, and it was just something fun for us to do.
I don't know if I ever knew about the epileptic stuff. How long was that an issue for you?
It doesn't really come up. I only had it for about 5 years, and then I grew out of it by like my early teens.
So you haven't had it happen like in your adult years at all?
No, not at all. As I got close to like teenage years, I had to go in constantly, like every other month, or it might have been monthly, to have blood drawn, have like CAT scans done. They'd sit me in a chair and stick a whole bunch of wires to my head and monitor my brain activity, this and that and the other thing. And they ended up finding that I had like this little like dead spot on my brain. But as I grew, that spot shrunk and kept shrinking and eventually just repaired itself. And they weaned me off the medication, and I've been fine ever since.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. You learned something new about your friends on your Memories podcast.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't really come up that much because it hasn't been a thing for many, many years.
All right. Man. All right. So I guess my next one, that I felt like with it being so important to like shaping my gaming tastes growing up, it would be disingenuous to not have a Pokemon memory. And there's a bunch I could have chosen, like from the card game or from the video games, like involving like trading and stuff like that. But the one that usually comes to mind and that I usually end up telling people the most about is the first time that I beat Pokemon Red and Blue. Because I just remember it so vividly in my head because it was such a big deal for me to finally like beat my rival and become the Pokemon champion. And this was back in the era when like you were young and kind of bad at Pokemon, and so you mostly just used your starter the whole time, and let him get like super buffed up and get to like level 80, and then mostly steamroll with just the one Pokemon. But I was standing in the backyard of my neighbor, Leah, again, for your mental reference, it was the house with the next door to Alan Tom's house, kind of across the street from Nikki's house.
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about? The like
Yep.
brown one.
Yep.
Yep, my friend Jake lived in that house, and I was standing in his backyard on his deck, hanging out and playing Pokemon, and it started to rain. And so we ran across the street, and I was standing in Nikki's garage with the garage door open while it started pouring rain outside. And as I was standing there in Nikki's garage, I finally beat the Pokemon League for the first time. And I was like, I just remember being so absurdly proud, even though like today it wouldn't feel like a huge accomplishment to me. But back then it was like, man, I saw this journey all the way through. Like I did it. And it just felt so good. Yeah, that is my Pokemon victory story. Nick, what do you got?
Hey, as a little bonus memory, talking about like writing stuff down and like keeping our own records to try to figure puzzles out. I remember in the Pokemon trading card game, I would write down like the contents of like the decks that the opponents were using and like figure out like all the cards I had so I could make better ones to counter it. And so I had like pages of this notebook that just had like deck contents written out.
That's amazing.
Oh man, that's some top tier play right there.
No kidding. This guy does not mess around.
And I did do that with like a lot of games, but that one I remember doing it with. But another memory I have is another sleepover memory, and I think it was like a first day of summer vacation type deal at Steve's house, and I remember I had started playing Final Fantasy IX that night, and I think there was probably a few of us there, and we had like several TVs hooked up, and we were all kind of playing different games. But one of the reasons that I've always wanted to kind of replay 9, or that maybe I don't have the highest opinion of it, is because we were hanging out that night, and I played that game for like 12 hours straight. Like, I did such a huge chunk of that game, and it was really fun, but by the end, I was just like brain dead. And I remember just like being a little delirious.
You start to go numb after a while.
Yeah. So there's like a big chunk of that game that's like kind of missing from my memory because I was just like going through the motions.
I'm glad I can provide that service for you.
But just in general, those like summer vacation or like when we had days off and like just having like 3 or 4 of us crammed into your room in the basement, those were always fun.
Those were good times. And even back then, a lot of the times we were all fine playing single player games just in the same room. Like that's been a thing most of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good times.
Noah?
I'm looking over my list. I'll go with my Super Nintendo for Christmas story. So every year for Christmas, we would go up to my grandma's. She would live in St. Paul, Minneapolis. I think it's St. Paul. And there were a million of us because she had like 9 or 13 kids. It was a big number. And one year, for some reason, and I don't remember how old I was, like somewhere between 8 and 13, I would think. We decided to stay up there for the night, but at a cousin's house. So like we left there and we went to the cousin's house, and it was kind of crappy because they got to sit there and open all their gifts, because that's how they did it. They would go to grandma's and then they'd come back and open all their gifts. I don't know what the Santa Claus rules were back then. But they opened up Killer Instinct, and we ended up playing Killer Instinct for much of the night. And then I was like so bummed that I didn't have a Super Nintendo, even though it was Christmas and I was going to get one, like, you know. Um, but when you're a kid, I guess you don't think of stuff like that. And I went home and we unwrapped our Super Nintendo that was to all three of the kids. I got Pirates of Dark Water. My younger brother got Super. Was it? It is Pitfall, but is it just called Pitfall? The Mayan Adventures.
I think it's called Super Pitfall since it's on the Super Nintendo.
And then no, that's my youngest brother. My younger brother just got like Madden 98 or something. One of those old Madden games, I guess. And then we also got the Super Game Boy, which was the real winner, but that I didn't know at the time. And I just remember playing Pokemon on the TV in the living room, like the big, the huge 20-inch TV or whatever we had at the time.
Absolutely massive.
It was pretty good times.
Good times. I didn't want to jump all the way up in line, but my next memory is also a Pokemon memory. The only system that I ever directly received growing up was a Game Boy Color. My sister and I were 4 years apart, but our birthdays are 5 days apart, and so we always celebrated our birthdays together. And my sister was the kind of person who was like, I'm equal, even though she was so much younger than me. And so a lot of times we would always get kind of like the same things. So that year for our birthdays, each opened a Game Boy Color. Mine was the hot pink magenta, and hers was the dark blue. And the game we got with those were Pokemon games. And so I got yellow, and she got blue. And our brother Adam, I think, already had red because his birthday was in the summer. And so the three of us just played through each of our respective, like, red, yellow, blue games. And so, like, it's like those original games obviously were better with rivals than they are now. So I'm pretty sure we always, like, sort of round robined, like, Adam's my rival, and I'm Bethany's rival, that kind of thing. And so it was like the competition, like, who could be the best, who could beat it. We obviously had to pick different starters from each other. I think I usually picked, well, I guess on this one it was Pikachu, but so I felt really cool because I had Pikachu. And yeah, I just have such a strong memory of, like, starting to play that game and then, getting to that cave where you need flash or whatever, and then doing the entire cave in the dark because I did not understand you were supposed to find the, move for it. And it was also before, like, brightness was visible, like, or like you could, like, look in certain brightnesses and see, like, the edges of the level, if that makes sense. So, yep, I completely did that in the pitch black, just fumbling around, getting in 5 trillion Zubat fights, and eventually I made it through.
That's a speedrun strat right there.
It was the slowest speedrun strat that ever existed.
Well, you were learning the route.
Yeah, that's true. I was on my own, again, in, like, 2000 or whatever. But yeah, that was super fun. And in the same way that you were describing, like, it was like the first, like, big, like, I did it, like, I mean, even when I met you as an adult, I was like, oh, you, like, video games get finished, like there, you get to the end. Like, there was a few games that we had that with, but, like, for the most part, it was, like, not really on my radar that you ever finished games. So, like, beating Pokemon was, like, a super big deal to me. And same strategy. Have your one Pokemon that you level up to 80, and if you die to anyone in the Elite Four with that guy, then you start over. So that very strong in my memories was like my own system, because I did not have those growing up. So it was like we still have that Game Boy Color. It's in probably like 10 feet from you right now in the basement.
That's awesome.
Dan?
I've got a number of things. I didn't write them down because I have so many, and I'm trying to jumble together what I should pick. Because I also have a Game Boy Color story that also involves Pokemon. So I think I'll go with that one since that's the trend. So my parents, as I mentioned before, were kind of restrictive on my gaming stuff, mostly my mother. And she did not want me to have a Game Boy. Didn't matter what, if it was a color or a regular one or whatever. She just did not want me to have one because the screen was too small. And there were numerous times where like my grandma bought me one anyway for my birthday or something. And I'd go over to her house because she didn't live too far away. I could bike there and play it for a bit. But my mom figured it out and told her to return it. And then a while later, when Pokemon was out, my cousin had it, and he had Pokemon. He let me borrow it, but he said, "Don't save over my game." I said, "Oh, okay." So I started a game like with a fresh set of batteries, and I made it almost all the way to the Elite Four, borrowing it for like a weekend with never turning it off. And eventually I had to turn it off because the batteries were about to die. So he never lost his save data, but I was way farther than he was, and I felt like I should have saved over it, but I was being nice and I didn't do that.
What a guy.
So that was my Game Boy.
Nice.
That's
All right.
interesting.
So my next one isn't really well, it's kind of a particular memory, but it's more about like the general concept. When I was young, every summer we would go on these long road trips. My family would, and they would usually last about 2 weeks. But I was like not a bad traveler as a kid because my parents knew I would be fine if I had a game to play. So every summer I would end up playing a different Game Boy game that my parents bought me. And I remember like standing in Target at the beginning of the trip, choosing what game I wanted to play. And I, one of the summers, picked out, this is in my early teenage years, picked out Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. And I knew that they like had interactivity between them, and my parents knew we were going to be on this road trip for like 2 weeks, so they just bought me both of them. So I was able to get Ages and Seasons together and then basically play them back to back, trading my data like immediately, which was the perfect way to experience those games. And
Yeah.
Those road trips in particular are like a big memory for me because not only would I get the game at the start, but my parents would stop at like Game Stops around the country with me, and we would like find, especially in like the early PS2 era, when I was a little older, we would find like games that you wouldn't normally see at our local Game Stops. So we would go on these road trips to like Texas or Florida or something, and I would come back with like 5 or 6 new PS2 games. Yeah, those were awesome, and the game that I remember the most was playing those Zelda games in the back seat. And I would just shut up. I would just sit back there and I would just play Game Boy till it got dark. And then when it was dark, I would have a little worm light going on and be able to see that way. It was awesome.
Oh, the old worm lights.
Yeah, trying to find the right angle so that it doesn't have that really strong dot in the middle. You gotta gotta cast the light at the right angle so you don't see that. That's pro strats.
That's so funny because on my little notes here, I literally, for the last that I had, it said GBC, Arrow, Pokemon Yellow, Arrow, Coil Light.
Yep.
It just didn't come up again.
You know that we had the exact same one.
I never had a Koya Light, but um, my next memory is it's pretty concise, but it's another Steve's Basement Hangouts. There was a period of time where I would go over there like after school or like on the weekends, and I don't like know if I was even playing a game, but I remember watching Steve play. It was like a Toy Story game on the PS1. Steve, do you remember which game?
It would have been Toy Story 2. It was You played as Buzz Lightyear, right? And you were like the level I remember was like a cul-de-sac, and you'd be jumping around in the trees and stuff, collecting tokens.
I think there was that, and I think there was like a Rugrats game you had too.
There was. Oh my god, what was it? I don't know if I own that game anymore. But that was either an N64 or a PS1 game. But it was like a really janky
PS1.
3D game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't think I still have that. I need to track that down again. I remember that game. It was not the best.
But I remember like watching you play those while we listened to the Mark, Tom, and Travis show, and just like hanging out.
Oh, that is. There's a lot of games that I kind of associate with the Mark, Tom, and Travis show.
Mm-hmm.
And like that era of music where we also were listening to like the South Park movie soundtrack and stuff.
And some of those, I had like gotten grounded for a really long time. So not only were those just like fun, but they were like a nice escape from not being able to play video games at home.
I forgot that you used to get grounded all the time. Wouldn't they take like your AV cord away from your N64 if you got like bad grades or something?
Yeah.
Which is like bad grades, but bad grades by like Nick standards, which is like fine grades.
An A-.
Like, you got a B, but you didn't turn in one of your assignments. So.
Even regular A, we're not so crazy about. Oh, that's a good one. I'm so glad that all your memories are memories for me too. Noah?
So my next one will be from Ocarina of Time, which I'm sure one of you has a memory of. But I remember playing that game for a very long time. And then I beat Ganon, and I was so excited I rushed out into the kitchen, screaming about how I beat Ganon. My mom freaked out and dumped boiling water on her foot. And she went to the doctor, and she blames me all the time still. I'm 30 years old. And she brings it up like about how I scarred her for life.
Literally.
That's good. Next time I see your mom, I'm going to say, I beat Ganon.
Seems mean.
She does.
I don't know if she'll remember that it was from that, but she definitely remembers me running into the kitchen, freaking out, and she thought something was wrong.
That's awesome.
So sorry she spoiled your happy moment.
I know.
And you spoiled her cooking.
The worst part is I can't even be happy about it because of all the guilt.
Yeah, that's a bummer. On the I think I've told you this before, but a tiny quick bonus memory on the topic of negative feelings around The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Anyone that knows me at this point knows that it is one of my favorite games ever. But when I bought that game, I 100% was only buying it to be cool in 5th grade. I did not want that game. I remember picking it out at Target and like driving home and reading the back of the box and being like, Ganondorf, what a stupid name. This game looks so dumb. Like, I don't want to play this dumb game. I want to play South Park on N64.
Is this the same era of Baseball Steve?
Yes, this is Baseball Steve. And I just like had the worst attitude about it and only was buying it because I was jealous of people talking about it at school. And then within like a few days, I was instantly the Steve that you know now. It was a game changer. Anyways, bonus story.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay, wasn't sure if you were finished with reliving your guilt. What a good nostalgia memory. My fourth memory here that I got is so like I mentioned, I didn't really have any systems of my own, and like I spent like the weeks with my mom, and we only had a NES, and we had plenty of games for it. Like we had like classics that you would expect for the Nintendo, like Tetris and Contra and Tecmo Bowl and was it AC Pro Am, Paperboy. Turns out Paperboy 2, Steve and I had a lengthy argument and a proof by going to my house and my parents' house and finding the game. But one of the good memories that I have with my mom was not into video games, and my stepdad also was at the time not super into anything like that. And so on very rare occasions, they would get in a super mood where they'd be like, let's play Galaga. And eventually all that stuff led into like the family of four of us playing Dr. Mario tournaments. And so those of you who know me, who know that I'm good at those kinds of games, the Dr. Marios and the Tetrises and the Catherines and whatnot. And so, I mean, obviously my parents were better than us children at Dr. Mario, but it's where I got all of my practice in getting good at those games because my sister and I were insanely competitive, and so were my parents. And so those were like some super good positive memories of actually playing games at my mom's house. And Dr. Mario is an amazing game, and everyone should play it. So
I can confirm that story's not made up because she destroys everyone she plays at Dr. Mario. It is embarrassing how good you are.
You gotta get rid of the viruses.
Oh, it's too hard.
Music is also great. What I love about Dr. Mario is that you get to pick between 3 or 4 different musics, like Fever, Chill, and another one, and that's like super cool. I enjoy that, and the various difficulties. But yeah, I don't think I ever won any of those tournaments. I'm pretty sure it was always up to my parents, but I'm sure I could kick their asses now.
Fever and Chill are 2 of the greatest video game songs ever. Why didn't they play those at Distant Worlds?
I don't know, man. Dan?
Well, for this next one, I think we're going to pick one that kind of got me rolling with all my newer consoles because my parents never bought me a console ever again after my Super. But my cousin had a PlayStation 1, and he never had a Super Nintendo. So what we ended up doing is we would trade consoles for months at a time. And I would play his PlayStation stuff, and he would, go through my Super Nintendo. And eventually I ended up buying his PlayStation from him and all of his games because he was going off to the military or something and wasn't going to take. And then I was finally able to kind of go nuts on all these things I had missed out on with the newer consoles, and that's part of the reason why I never had a 64 because I couldn't buy one or afford a new one myself. But I did go straight out and buy Legend of Dragoon and played the crap out of it as soon as I got that PlayStation. Although now that I think about it, I actually bought it kind of on a whim. I just went to the store, like Toys R Us, I think it was, that was near us, and they had the greatest hits on sale for like $5 or something. And I picked it up and I played through it, and one of the best decisions or best purchases I ever made on a whim.
Yeah, not bad, man. Not bad at all. Oh. All right, are we rounding into our last one each here?
So
I think so.
Did we all save our best for last, or did we all just pick them randomly?
I certainly saved my best for last.
I did too.
And I'm going last.
I did not because I went chronological, so I'm going out with not a whimper, but just the most recent one that I think is worth mentioning. And this last one is cheating because there's so many that I could pick. Like, I'm not talking about any of the stuff around like PC games that I used to play. I have a ton more N64 memories, all kinds of stuff. Probably 100 other memories or sleepovers with Nick and stuff. But the one I'm going to choose that I know Nick can latch on to is when we were in either late middle school or early high school. I think it was early high school. Me and Nick and our friend put together a list of 30 games, and we just called it The List. And the idea was that you had to play through all the games in the list in order, and the first person to beat everything in the list got bragging rights, basically. And it was all the games that we loved growing up. So it was like playing through the StarCraft campaign, playing through Donkey Kong 64, playing through Age of Empires, all these different games that we all like contributed to this one master list of 30 games. And we'd have different like categories of stuff. Like I think in Donkey Kong 64, we specified that you had to collect everything.
That killed the list right there.
That was, and I was going to say, and that was the list killer because people got to that spot on the list and it took so long, everyone lost motivation. And I don't think any of us beat the list. I think I got the farthest down it, but I only think I got about 15 games in.
Yeah, and I cannot remember how far I got either. Was the other person Kyle?
It might have been Kyle. I couldn't remember if it was Kyle or Scott.
Okay.
I mean, it feels like in that era it would have been Kyle because he would have been contributing games to it too. But that, like, making a list of games that you have to play through in an order and like choosing categories and stuff is like that type of thing is very in line with the like type of joy that I get from playing games. Like, this is the pre-backloggery era, but I was already like documenting and making a list of games to play through. And I remember more than anything else, it was fun putting the list together. But I remember that being like a big topic of conversation for us for a while, talking about the list, getting through the list.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine is also not like the best because I was also kind of going chronologically, and it's also not super specific. But I think when it's probably when we were all in like college, maybe, or the college age years, you know. And like some of our friends, like our friend Joe Wade, he wasn't quite out of high school yet, and like Nikki. But all of us had like second shift jobs, so we were all like up, or I think you even had like late shift jobs, so we would all congregate a lot of times at my house, and I'll pile into my bedroom, and like there'd be a bunch of people trying to sit on my futon, and I had like my desk and computers and all crammed in. But I remember that was like part of the Modern Warfare 2 era, where we'd have like Joe Wade or somebody like bringing over their 360 every time, plugging it into the extra TV, and trading off controllers.
Modern Warfare 2. That was a game for us, man. There's a lot of different memories in your room like that. Like, I could have put the bad games era onto my memories list, which would slot right in with that too. But that's for another time. It's a good one.
I feel blessed having stepped foot into your room with such nostalgic memories just inside of it.
As you should.
My last one isn't the most nostalgic, I'll say, but it is, and Steve's heard this one before. This is the moment I knew I was a gamer. So I used to run with punks back in the day. I used to be a troublemaker up to no good, and there was, I don't remember what was happening, but like people were asking me if I'd go outside or whatever. My friends would be like, "Hey, you want to come hang out or whatever?" And I was like, "No, I'm okay. I'm gonna stay inside today." And that's because my parents had purchased A Link to the Past,
Oh,
which
baby.
is in my top 3 video games of all time, believe it or not. And she had to go to the door for some reason because one of our neighbors wanted to talk to her, and she's like, "Don't touch my game." And I was having none of that. She was outside the blacksmith, and I immediately grabbed the controller and just like, this feels like such a dumb feeling to talk about, but I just played in that little area just to get some video game. I just gotta play a little bit, and then I left Link exactly where she left him, and I realized that I would much rather play video games than talk to human beings or go outside.
And you were right.
Yeah, sometimes I go outside and talk to human beings, but it's usually about games
Only
or for
when we
games.
drag you out.
Dude, I had to go to this video games music thing.
Couldn't send me away after all of the effort I put into coming to get you.
I know. I tried talking you into staying inside, but we ended up going.
All right, are we on to me?
We are.
All right. So the reason why I consider this one like my most nostalgic memory, I think, is just because it came up again recently. So, when I was growing up, and honestly, kind of in the present-ish, my dad was super into like all of the new things. Like he was, I would say, mostly a PC gamer, but he is like the biggest Microsoft fanboy. And so like when the Xbox was becoming a thing, like he was like signed up for everything that you could possibly like be a beta tester for, and like all that kind of stuff. And he was so excited about getting an Xbox. And so when he got Halo, it's like literally the only thing that my dad, myself, my sister, and my brother all did for like ever, like until we got a PlayStation. That's like the only thing we did on the weekends, and it was so insanely fun. Like, and a lot of times the 4 of us would just be playing Slayer, but as we kept playing the game and started getting bored of that, then we would do Team Slayer, and it was always like me and Adam. He was the best, and it pissed off my dad so much that he was not the best at the game against my sister and my dad. Like I was the worst. I am not the greatest at shooters. Such a girl gamer about shooters, and it was just so much fun. And why it came up recently is for some weird reason. One of my students, in a moment of free time, he's a 6th grader, somehow like used a VPN and downloaded a version of Halo, and then he showed one of the other kids in the class how to do it, and the 2 of them just spent the entire like 10 minutes or whatever playing against each other on like Hang 'em High with like sniper rifle. Like, oh my god, just like flooded back all those amazing memories of Halo, the original. And that's really the only Halo I like actually really played, was the first one. We just like played that one to death, and it was a lot of fun. Like we had started all on the same TV, and then eventually my dad, who was so like yes, no screen cheating, and so he got us a separate TV so that me and Adam could play downstairs, and he could play upstairs. And then whenever we would inevitably win, you could hear my dad would like start pounding his feet on the ground, like to like indicate his frustration to us who were downstairs. So you just hear like this rumble of his feet on the ground of like, God damn it, I lost to the kids again. You know, it was so good. Yeah, that one's definitely like my most nostalgic. I'm gonna. So sorry about the time, Noah, but I have just a really quick bonus game that I like. Steve told me childhood, so I
Oh
didn't
my
have a technically.
God.
I'm so sorry. Just like 2 seconds. When I started dating Steve, he was very much like, "Oh my God, you don't own a DS," and so we bought a DS. And like, I don't know if it was my very first game for the DS, but Elite Beat Agents was the first game that I enjoyed on the DS, and I just need to make a quick shout out to EBA. Such an amazing game. Made me feel like that was my moment of being a gamer.
That was definitely the start of me turning you from a gamer to like a Steve, Noah, Nick, and Dan super gamer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, come join the cult of personality that is the gamer.
Welcome
Exactly.
to the club.
Yeah.
So happy to be here.
I wanted to say that in 20 years, those students of yours are going to be on a podcast talking about their top 5 nostalgic moments, and playing Halo in Miss Leah's class is going to come up.
I hope I'm listening to that podcast.
Me too, but mostly they'll just be arguing about the memories of Fortnite versus Apex, but you know. All right, Dan. What's your last boy?
Well, this one is a big one for me because right after high school, I started playing World of Warcraft, and that's a big one for me because all of my friends went off to college. I went to a local college, so I was like the only one still around. So when I wasn't at school, I was spending time playing it, and it ended up um, making a lot of great, super long time friends for me. As you guys know, there's one in Kansas City that I go to visit regularly. There's a bunch that we meet up in PAX every year. Um, and along those lines too, of course, the LAN parties. When BC came out, I took my computer tower and all my crap all the way over to one of our other friends' house. We went into his basement, and there were like 4 of us in there, all sitting around a ping pong table, leveling like through the entire night and passing out on the floor at some. And
True good.
yeah, it was great. And then you just meet so many interesting characters. I met so many interesting people on it, and one of them being my friend Ryan from Jamaica, who unfortunately is no longer with us as of earlier last.
Sorry to hear that.
I don't mean to end it on a downer, but yeah, that was. But yeah, I got to meet him one time when I was visiting Florida, and then all these other people from all over the country, and it just meant that game. Well, it sucks really bad now. Meant a lot to me while I was playing it during those years.
That's awesome. Cool. Anybody have any other bonus ones to throw out?
And make Noah have an aneurysm.
I mean, we had mega LAN parties at my parents' house because we had a gigantic house. When we rebuilt it when I was a freshman in high school, so Halo was running on like there were 4 or 5 consoles in my house with 4 or 5 TVs all running. Like 10 or 20 of us playing. It was nuts.
Nice.
But
Awesome.
I didn't really enjoy Halo that much, so it wasn't a big one for me, but just hanging out with everyone was fun.
Honestly, I feel like, not next episode, but I feel like on a future podcast, we could probably go around and do another set of this, because I still have plenty in my head
of course.
that I haven't talked about. Like, it was hard for me to pare the list down. Obviously, there's a ton of memories growing up with games, so I think this was a really cool topic, and I think we should, at some point in the future, revisit it.
Definitely.
Anybody have any topics for next week? Or next time?
So personally, I was kind of putting this list together. I thought it could be fun for us to look either at the whole of 2019 or at least like through the summer of 2019 at the games that are coming out that we're looking forward to or plan to pick up. just to kind of build some excitement for the coming games.
I'm down.
Yeah,
Also,
that'd be.
um, I have one more nostalgic thing, but
Oh my god.
if anybody has anything else,
I'm trying to get to Apex.
I'm not even Apex. I gotta go shopping and stuff.
Damn.
Back when I played Mega Man 3, which was the game that got me into Mega Man, and my favorite Mega Man, we used to buy M&Ms, and I would pretend that the M&Ms were different powers, and then
Nice.
I would draw layouts of Mega Man levels, and I would essentially give the Mega Man who played in whatever dumb level I drew in my fantasy world, he would get that amount of those powers, and he would have to try and make it through the drawing I made.
What a nerd.
I was 8 or 6.
That sounds amazing.
A second thing I wanted to bring up was I think we should make a fucking list and do the list.
Oh, like the list?
Like the list, but for adults.
I agree. And maybe on a future podcast we could have like a draft. We could talk through the creation of the list.
I mean, I want a list now. I want to be making a list.
Okay. Well, then not for a podcast, but maybe we'll give an update on the podcast.
That sounds good. So, like,
yeah.
give me the rules of that list again.
So, the only rules were we defined a set number of games. I'm pretty sure it was 30. And in the original list, we specified what in the modern era we would think of as speedrun categories, like play it on whatever, just play through the story, or you have to play it on hard mode, or you have to do all the collectibles. And they were usually kind of built around how we played the game initially. Like we do everything in Donkey Kong 64, because as kids we did everything in Donkey Kong 64. So we all put in games onto this list that we were very nostalgic about, and then you just had to play through the list from top to bottom and update everyone as you went through the list how far you were. And it was kind of a race to the bottom. It was whoever got to the bottom of the list won and got bragging rights. But we never like put a prize at the end or anything. It was like we knew that the journey to the bottom of the list would be the reward in and of itself.
I feel like in our elderliness, we can't really race to the bottom, at least fairly. I don't know. We all work different schedules and we're all busy and such.
Yeah. Yep.
And
so
30 is a lot.
we could do something similar. Also, remember there was like that other podcast I was telling you about? We could do a list where you have options too, where like every step of the way you can choose A or B.
Or we could like do like a bingo card.
Yeah, something like that. So
let's just do all of those.
We should crystallize this idea here in the coming days.
I am 100% for it. But is that it for this podcast?
I think so.
I believe so.
I
Okay.
think this was a solid episode. And thank you to Leah for coming on and sharing some of her memories too. Hopefully you'll come on again in the future.
Leah, would you also like to plug your podcast?
Yes, I absolutely would. My knitting podcast. I know you guys all love hearing about knitting, especially hearing about yarns and what I'm doing with that yarn. So I'm Eventual Knits on YouTube, and if you wanna boost up my subscription numbers, I would appreciate that.
We'll make you e-famous.
Oh yeah, that
Smash
pretty
that
good.
like button.
No kidding.
I stream ITG on Twitch occasionally, extremely bad quality with my cell phone.
It's better than nothing.
It's true. You're streaming. If we're doing plugs and you want to check out Leah's channel, you can also check out my YouTube channel. It's Blinkoom, BLINKOOM. And it's basically just this podcast, but if I was alone on the podcast, and it's me talking about games. So if you want more of my voice talking about games, you can go there.
Cool. As we said, I go to twitch.tv/Nornsey. Like, you can find me there. I am usually on about 7 Central till 10ish Central, depending on the day. And I'm learning to speedrun Harvest Moon 64, and I do runs of The Messenger. And the
Super fun to
such.
watch.
I bet they're fun. Like, I'm too busy running them and playing, so I can't watch myself. Otherwise, I
Okay,
would.
but even watching you not find the music box on Harvest Moon was quite fun.
God, that was so stupid.
See, I love to be your little number one helper.
Thank you for being my biggest fan. But
You are welcome.
I think that'll do it for us. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.